All right, thank you for tuning in again. This is your second sample question having to do with the Canadian Experience class. And again, this one's going to really focus on some of those tricky elements with regard to the Canadian Experience class that you might encounter on your full skills exam. And here we have Carlos. So Carlos is a Venezuelan who recently completed a 2-year diploma to become an electrical technician in Edmonton. He tells you that when he was studying in this program, he was placed in a 6-month full-time internship at Eskimos Electricals that gave him a large amount of experience, and he can now complete all of the same tasks as experienced technicians, including all of the main duties listed for his profession on the NOC. In order to support himself during his studies and internship, Carlos worked as a waiter in a Venezuelan restaurant. Upon graduating 14 months ago and receiving a 2-year post-grad work permit, he has switched to working full-time at the restaurant and still interns at Eskimos Electricals for 20 hours per week in performing all of the technician tasks required. The owner of the company has even promised him a full-time salaried position as a technician once their budget has enough to support another employee in 2 months. Carlos would like to use this job offer in his express entry application as he feels that this would satisfy the requirements of the Canadian Experience class. What would you advise? And for potential answers, we have A. So he meets the minimum requirements of this stream, and the job offer would likely move him above the CRS cutoff to be given an ITA. We have B. He meets the minimum requirements of this program, but might also qualify for the Federal Skilled Trades program. We have C. He does not meet the minimum requirements of this program and likely will not by the time his work permit expires. And finally, we have D. He does not meet the requirements of this program, but can if he works 45 hours a week as a paid technician in the next 9 months. All right, so you can see you have quite a few tricky little elements in here, and I hope that you are leaning towards a certain answer already. If you want to press pause to take a look at this question again, that's not a problem. And if you are ready to go and you think you know the answer, we're going to continue right now. So when you take a look at this scenario, you can see some pretty important pieces of information here. So we have his diploma. He completed an internship. We have his ability, because remember that intent and ability are important in answering these questions as well. We have his work that he performed during his studies, and of course his work that he performed after his studies. And he also has a promise to be hired on a full-time basis. All right, so let's dig a little bit deeper into this scenario. So we could see that he received a 2-year diploma to become an electrical technician. With that, we get a hint about the amount of time he has spent in Canada and, of course, what he was doing during that time, which is essential in understanding whether or not he meets the qualifications needed in order to qualify under the Canadian Experience class. So he conducted a 6-month-long full-time internship as well. And we have his ability, so he can do everything related to the NOC. Now, while he was a student, he was working as a waiter. And of course, he received a 2-year post-grad work permit 14 months ago. And when he received that, he switched over to work full-time at the restaurant. So when we look at time, we can see he's 14 months into a 24-month-long post-grad work permit. All right, and with that as well, we again have clarification on what he's been doing since he's been in Canada. So he has now 14 months as a full-time waiter, but he still interns at Eskimos Electricals for 20 hours per week in performing all of the technician tasks required. So we can see again that he has 14 months on a part-time basis as an intern again. And the owner of the company has promised him a full-time position as soon as the funding works out for them. So is he eligible under the Canadian Experience class is what they are asking. In total, when we take a look at the role, we could see that he has worked as a technician intern for 13 months in total and a waiter for 26 months. Now for the first option we'll take a look at, we have A. Now he meets the minimum requirements of this stream, and the job offer would likely move him above the CRS cutoff to be given an ITA. So when we see all of that important information in the scenario, and we compare it with the general requirements of the Canadian Experience class, we could see that he actually does not meet those requirements. So he's been working as a waiter and as an intern. Remember that the Canadian Experience class needs 1 year of paid NOC OAB Canadian work experience. And even with that job offer, and it's not even a job offer really at this point, it's a promise. There's no mention of an LMIA or anything like that. But anyways, the person needs to meet the requirements of either the skilled worker, skilled trades, or Canadian Experience class in order to move on into the pool of qualified candidates, and then that job offer would give him the extra 600 points. But he doesn't even meet those minimum requirements, so he would not be able to move on into that pool. And with that, we could see that A is incorrect. So let's move on to explore the other options. So when we take a look at this question again and we start looking at the answers, hopefully by being able to see that important information, we're going to have a better idea of what some of the potentially correct answers are. Now let's take a look at B. So B is a really great option because it gives us essentially two options. So we can be either doubly correct, or we can be 100% sure, 200% sure, I guess, of it being incorrect. And those two steps, of course, in this one are that he meets the minimum requirements of this program, in which they're referring to the Canadian Experience class, but might also qualify for the Federal Skilled Trades program. As we'll see a few times in this question here, he doesn't meet those requirements of the Canadian Experience class. And this is something that you'll see quite a bit in this, is that he doesn't meet especially the experience requirement. And that is, of course, that he needs to have 1 year of paid NOC OAB Canadian work experience. We saw that all his time was really spent in internships when we're looking at the NOC B parts, and of course as waiter, which is not NOC OAB. And yes, even though his work experience was authorized on the post-grad work permit, it is just not at the appropriate NOC level. And as we move on into seeing if he qualifies for the Federal Skilled Trades requirement, even though we know that this answer is incorrect, we could see that with the federal skilled trades requirements, he would need to have 2 out of 5 years of paid skilled trade work experience. Remember, that's paid experience, so not internships. And of course, either a provincial certification of qualification or an offer of full-time employment. So with that, we can see that B is definitely incorrect. And that leaves us 2 really great options to explore. Now let's explore D as our next option. He does not meet the requirements of this program. So we already know that from exploring the other 2 answers that we analyzed. But if he works 45 hours a week as a paid technician in the next 9 months, he will qualify. Now, when we take a look at the information here, we know that he has completed 14 months of his 24-month post-grad work permit. So he has 10 months left. When we take a look at the full-time requirements, of course, full-time is 30 hours a week. And what they're saying is that if he adds on another 15 hours a week, then over the course of the year, it would wind up being the 1,560 hours. Now, in this one here, yes, the person needs to have 1 year of paid NOC OAB work experience in Canada. But remember that when a person works in excess of 30 hours a week, that time does not make up for the lack of 1 year of full-time work experience. So if somebody works, let's say 90 hours a week, that doesn't mean that the person only has to work for 3.5 months in order to meet these requirements. All right, so with that, we definitely know that D is incorrect as well. And with this, we're only left with one option now, and that option is C. So let's explore that, and hopefully you were moving in that direction already anyways. And let's explore C now. So in C, it says he does not meet the minimum requirements of this program and will likely not meet those requirements by the time his work permit expires. So as we saw in the previous answer that we analyzed, he's already completed 14 months out of his 24-month post-grad work permit. Now that leaves 10 months for him to meet those requirements of having 1 year of paid NOC OAB Canadian work experience. But remember that if the person works 200 hours, well, it's impossible, but works 100 hours a week, that doesn't make up for the lack of doing that work over 1 year. And with that, we can see that C was the correct answer here. So if you got that, a very big congratulations again. I hope it's becoming more and more clear how important it is to understand those experience requirements in the Canadian experience class. If the question is on language, that's a little bit more straightforward, but experience has a lot of tricky little elements in it to pay attention to. A very big thank you for tuning in again. You have one more sample question left, and then hopefully you'll be able to check off the Canadian experience class from your list of things to study. So thanks again, and we'll chat in your next question.